Hey, how's it going? My name is Dan Mueller. Today we're going to talk for my demonstration speech. We're going to talk about doing a valve adjustment job on a vintage Volkswagen Beetle. It's pretty easy job to do. So just get right into it and show you how it works. A few things to remember when you're doing this is safety. Always be safe. You want to make sure that nobody's playing in the car. The car's going to turn on while you're working on or anything. Some people recommend disconnecting the positive battery cable. You can do that if you want to. If you know there's nobody's going to play with, if you have kids around or something, it's probably a good idea to do that. Also, don't have the keys inside the car. Another good way to prevent the car from starting. So we'll get right into it. So this is a 1973 Volkswagen Beetle. It's got an air-cooled engine. One of the reasons that you do a valve adjustment job kind of frequently, about every 3,000, 4,000 miles or so, is because it's an air-cooled engine, and which means it doesn't have a radiator. It's cooled just simply by this device here. There's a fan inside of here that turns. It blows cool air on the engine and keeps it cool, because these things get pretty hot. If they do get pretty hot, the life of the engine will be shortened considerably. So the job is pretty simple. To begin with, you have to make sure that the car's been sitting at least overnight. Overnight doesn't have to be a strict rule, but it's got to be sitting for a long period of time so the engine can completely cool and be at a very cold state. There's no internal heat coming from the engine at all. So the reason for that is because the metal in the engine expands when it gets warmer and contracts when it gets colder. So when I show you later the actual measuring device that we're going to use, you want that gap to be there. So when the engine does cool, the gap is going to be at 0, but we're going to be putting that gap at 6/1000ths of an inch. So there's a few tools that we use for this. 3 simple tools. It's a 13 millimeter closed wrench, that 6/1000ths of an inch measuring device that I told you about, and a simple flathead screwdriver. So these are the only tools you're going to need for this job. It's pretty simple. So we'll start over here at the engine again. What we have here, this card, this is the distributor. We're going to open up the top of the distributor, pull the cap off, and you're going to see this rotor in here. That's the rotor. Now when this cap was on here, it sat like this. A Volkswagen engine, the firing order is 1, 4, 3, 2. That's the order in which each cylinder fires. That's number 1 cylinder. That's number 1. That's 2. That's 3, and that's 4. So it goes 1, 4, 3, 2. The rotor turns around this way inside of there. So remember, this is the number 1 cylinder, the number 1 spark plug that is attached to. To begin, we got to put the engine at top dead center, which means that we turn the engine by hand until this rotor is pointing towards where that number 1 wire was. And if you come in here, you'll see TDC. That means top dead center. So that means the piston's at the top of its cycle and it's about to fire. So it's at number 1 and it's about to fire. So that's the only setup you do in here. Next, we're going to come down to underneath the engine to where our valve covers are, or valves, actual valves themselves, at the end of the head, which is this component here. Now, to make this simpler for this video, I've got an actual head set up to make it easier to demonstrate how this works. This is what you saw underneath the car. You can pull this bail down here, take your valve cover off the head, and these are your valves. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 valves per head. Now, in the situation, we've got the number 1 cylinder set up, so this is number 1. So these are the valves we're going to be adjusting. You take your 13 millimeter socket, along with your thick 6/1000ths of an inch feeler gauge, and your flathead screwdriver. So you're going to take your wrench and you're going to loosen this jam nut. The screwdriver is going to sit on this adjusting nub here. So the further you tune that in, the tighter the gap between the bottom of here and that's in the top of the valve. So this distance, this is not, in your actual card, this won't move like this. It'll just barely move a little bit. So you're going to adjust the gap here between that and that. So you turn this until you think it's there, tighten this down again, and then take your feeler gauge and feel between there and make sure you have some slight drag between the two surfaces. And that'll get you 0.6 of an inch. If you can't get in there, it's too small, and if it gets in there really, really loose, it's too big. So you got to loosen it up again. Turn your screwdriver, put your screwdriver in there. If it's too loose, just tighten it down a little bit. Tighten this down again. This always has to be tight when you're testing it. And then if you get a nice drag on it like that, then you know you're good. You do that with both of these valves. One's the intake and one's the exhaust valve. So the air-fuel mixture goes in, it gets compressed, it explodes, the piston, then this will open and it'll push out, and then it comes out of the exhaust port here, and that's the exhaust you smell coming out of the back of the car. Once you do number 1, remember I told you the firing order was 1, 4, 3, 2. So 1, 4, 3, 2 backwards is 4 or 1, 2, 3, 4. You think about that for a minute, figure that out. So when you're done with number 1, now you got to move the engine again, counterclockwise. Now this is important that you turn it counterclockwise. If you go the other way, it's not going to go to the number 2 valves won't be in the neutral position. The way I remember it is counterclockwise. When the car runs, it runs clockwise, like a Volkswagen runs like a clock, right? Counterclockwise, when you're working on it, you go backwards. So we're going to turn this pulley backwards 180 degrees. That's important, 180 degrees. So this top dead center is going to be on the bottom of this pulley. So using our hands, we'll just turn it. This car has these degree marks on it. So there's 0, lines up with this piece of metal here. Make sure that's a 0. So you'll notice this is now pointing to the number 2 position. Remember I told you when this was on here, this was 2 right here, this wire. So now it's pointing over there to number 2. So now we're going to come back over to our head on the bench, or if you're doing this in real life, you climb back under the car. And this would be number 2. Do the same thing, loosen it up, loosen the jam nut, adjust the screw until this slides with enough friction that you feel that's necessary. Following with the other valve. Again, we'll come back to the car. That'd be one side or one bank of the engine. Come back to the car again. Again, counterclockwise, because we're working on it. Come back, turn that another 180 degrees. Sometimes it's a little difficult because the cylinders are turning inside there and creating compression. Top dead center again. Now it's pointed to number 3. Remember, so the way that an engine works is number 1's over there, number 2's here, number 3 is over here, and number 4 is over here. The engine is in the rear of a car in the Volkswagen on this one. So the front is 1 and 3, and the rear of the car, is 2 and 4. So you're going to come back over here, you're going to pull that valve cover off just like we did over at the bench. Just like we did at the bench. And we're going to do the same thing over and over again. When you're done, you're going to put new seals on the valve cover. New gaskets in the valve cover. Put them back on. Put the bail up. Snap it in place. And you're good to go. Hopefully at the end of your time, your engine will start up just fine and you're good to go. So there we go. That's doing a valve adjustment job on a vintage Volkswagen Beetle. Thanks for watching.